Over the last few videos, I've built the chassis, and in the most recent one, I showed you the rear suspension. Well, it's time to install it. So after a quick sweep, I got the chassis on the jack stands, made sure it was level. I got the new torsion tube and centered it on the chassis over the new frame horns. With the center marked, I installed the new 5x5s. Welcome back to the garage, guys. I'm Damian. This is the Binder Builder. While you hit that like button, let me tell you what we're doing today. While the Buggy Barn 5x5 and custom torsion tube are a complete suspension system, you do need to install them on the chassis right, and that's what I'm doing today. And the reason? So the problem with it being drooped out like this, I need to set it where it needs to be so I can adjust my camber. And you adjust the camber by how high or low this is. As you can see, that it's angled. It's not sitting straight. So what do I need to do to make sure everything's in the right place and to make sure everything is straight? To do that, I need to put the chassis at ride height, which I don't know yet, and put the rear arms where they would be if I had 35-inch tires, which I don't have. So how am I going to figure all this out? Well, for the tires, I'm going to just measure from the ground to the center, and the reason that is it's the center of the tire. If I'm using a 35-inch tire, I should have 17.5 inches to the center if 35s or 35s. And I think that'll be close enough for me to do on that. So what about chassis height? That's where things get a little tricky. To get a theoretical ride height, now of course, I don't know what it is yet, but to get the theoretical ride height, I went and turned to my Facebook friends in the various Baja bug forums. In them, I asked, what are people running, tire size, and what their belly height is. And while I did get some constructive criticism, more than enough guys told me what they had and what tire size they were running. And while I did discount the 124-inch belly height, that's way higher than I want to be, I did note and average out the remaining answers that I did get. The average belly height of a Baja bug running 33 to 35-inch tires is actually 17.9 inches. Oh, I did get a little bit of heat online about focusing solely on ride height. Please understand, I'm not trying to set my droop or compression or anything that has to do with suspension travel. I'll deal with that. I'm actually placing my shocks and so forth. Today is all about camber. So let me actually show you what I'm talking about. So this looks pretty much straight up and down. That's where I want it. But here, watch this. All right, ready to watch it? You see that? So, and then the same thing, if I go too low, it goes the opposite direction. So again, this whole situation is not to set the ride height, it's to set the camber on my rear arms while I have everything easy. Because as soon as I weld this puppy in, I'm stuck and I have to use the fine adjustments over here, and I don't want to have to do that. So I set my chassis height to the theoretical ride height. Then I laid the rear suspension system on the frame horn. Then I checked the as-is camber angle. I'm at 89.2. Not too bad, not too bad. Let's see which direction I need to twist it to make it perfectly 90. So I need to go down. In order to get it to angle down a little bit, I grabbed some spacers and spaced up the torsion tube, allowing me to point the inner pivots down. All right, what number do you guys see? 89.2? So if I go up, 87, 88, 89.2. Oh. 89.9, 8, 89.9. It just flipped. It went the other way. Let's go back up. All right, that's where I need to be. So 89.9. All right, I know what I need to do. I need to point it down, the pivots down slightly. So what I did, here's the center mark. As you can see, it's still somewhat centered. And so actually it's a little off. All right, so that is right on centered. With it centered, I marked the frame horns with a Sharpie. These will be my cut marks. And I've cut that slot out so it'll be able to fit down slightly in it. It's only like a 1/4 inch I need to lose. And so that will sink this down into here. It'll weld it basically to the frame horns, which is going to be awesome. And then I'll be able to fully weld all this in, but I want to make sure I have that camber set up properly first before I do any welding. Then I'll basically stitch this. Those of you who follow me had some great advice on how to connect this to the chassis. I'm going to go ahead and stitch the top, and I will do some plate work on the bottom just to make it look nice, particularly underneath the frame horns, just to give it a nice little gusseting and so forth so that it doesn't twist. I'm not worried too much about it twisting because there's literally no torsion on it because it's not a torsion tube. So it's not like it's holding up the car. So all it is a pivot tube, just like anything else. So it'll be fine. Now that we got that, we can keep going. All right, as you can see, here's the cut marks here. And this mark here is where it needs to cut to, because that way it sinks in. That's how far out it is. I'll remove this, cut these out, and look at putting those in. So with the new cutoff wheel attached to the grinder, I got busy. Once the spacer was out, I cut the channels for the inner pivots to sink into. Then I placed the suspension back into place to see if I trimmed enough. All right, let's see how this worked. As you just saw, I just chopped that away. Looks like I could still put that in there. That went pretty much exactly where it needed to be. And same on the other side. Still completely lined up. Time to see if our camber angle is correct. Oh crap! Look at that! Yes! Dude, that was first cut. 89.7, 89.8, 89.9, 89.7. What I'm doing is I'm just basically playing with it right now. See if I can adjust it at all. Dang, that's freaking close. We're good. Oh man. Nice. I'm gonna be honest with you. I hope I'm doing this right, because that like nailed it. Sweet. All right, let's keep going. So just thinking, I want to just jump in and start welding, but probably best I didn't do that. I gotta think through it all. Remember, I was gonna put in a little overlay plate that connects these tubes on this side and the whole thing and weld it all up. So if I weld that all up here, and then I put an overlay plate in here, that'll close this gap as well, securing everything on this to this, and then maybe build some ramps down as well to connect this whole system to the chassis. So that way I'll get my stitches across here, as well as the ramps and so forth to connect here. This obviously will connect this to the frame horns. There'll be no twisty. That's actually going to work out pretty nice. So I'm going to start building that overlay and put it back on, see how everything works out. And it sounds like this is all going to come out really good. So wish me luck. Let's do this. Since I need to finish the overlay plate for the crossmember, I pulled out the workbench and set the chassis on it. This is way more comfortable than working on the ground. Then after getting some measurements, I pulled out the leftovers from the 2x6 I used on the chassis and marked out my cuts and drill points. And after center punching the drill marks, I got to cutting. Then drilling. Then I hole sawed the plate to go around the frame horns. This attempt fit, so I finished hole sawing the center cutouts. After fitting it up, I used the bandsaw to trim the overlay to the both-sided crossmember. All right, after screwing up the first piece, I did manage to get the second piece right. Here we go. I gotta knock down some of the welds behind it, but it'll fit just like so. I purposely left that much room around the welds so that I could weld into them, cover them up. I cut these holes out just to lay down some beads and just kind of connect it all the way across, but obviously there's some high points. I just need to go and clean it all up, and then I'll weld everything up, set this back on the ground, put on the torsion tube, and then kind of just final weld everything up. With a little cleanup, I secured the overlay in place using clamps to ensure it was tight against the crossmember. Then I stitch weld the overlay and installed the rear suspension to make sure everything was still correct. 89.8. Time to make the overlay permanent. So I removed the suspension again and got to it. Then I welded the hard to reach areas while they were easily accessible. Then the chassis went back on the jack stands for final assembly, but not before cleaning up the welds a little with the sanding disc. Then the suspension was reinstalled once more. Okay, here we go. I got the torsion tube against the chassis. I went ahead and put the overlay on. It's welded up completely. And now it's time to get everything tack welded in and then start laying some bead. Then I can disassemble it once again and then fully weld everything while it is completely held in place. But anyway, next step, weld, 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 weld around that. And yeah, we'll go from there. So after double checking everything, including ride and arm height, I double check my camber. And with everything checking out, I tack welded things to hold them in place. Then the real welding started. All right, moving on here. Just stitching up the, see this stitch right there. I kept it fairly short and to the plate because I am going to be using this basically to plate that and cup it. I can't cover up this at all because that's where that block plate goes. So anyway, I'm gonna have to trim that up. Did a little bit of stitching there, in the inner corners there as well, all the way around, and then of course the same stitch right there. I don't know if you guys could see that very well, but anyway, I got to cut these down to the to fit in here, and then I am going to, here's the center. Thinking about just using some more 2x4. I have some left over, and basically cut a angle and just cope it around, or hand cut it around this so it goes right up along there and just kind of has a skid. Whoop. So that's what's next. Let's get going. Okay, that's a good stopping place for this video. I'll finish plating, sanding, painting, priming, and then installation on the Bug. Yeah, we're that close in the next video. So please like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comment section. Am I going too far? Not far enough? Let me know. But with that, I'm Damian. This is the Binder Builder. I'll see you on the next one.